Welcome to Project Comedy, a podcast by and for military veterans doing stand-up comedy, turning military banter into quality stand-up comedy acts. We might be veterans, but our comedy aims to get everybody laughing. When you've performed a few gigs and have got used to memorising your script, you've nailed your attitudes and you're starting to get good connection, what's next to do? You'll often see other comedians performing in a way that's very different to you, using skills that you haven't tried yet. And I'm pretty sure that your MCs at the gigs you've done will be using one comedy skill set you might not have tried yet: crowd work. That direct connection with the audience and getting them involved. For many of us, me included, that's a terrifying concept, a terrifying thing to do. To drop your script and just improv for laughs? Or are there any behind-the-screen tricks that you can use to make crowd work a success? To examine what's involved and how to manage the fear of crowd work, I'm joined by the dark soul of Project Comedy that is Gabriel Murphy, the dark soul trainee, Sean Morris, Uber nerd, Jamie Johnson, and I'm the boat gypsy with a dog far more intelligent than me, Jay Saunders. And I'm delighted to introduce the man that made Project Comedy possible, professional comedian and comedy instructor, Jay Sodgar. How the devil are we, folks?
Hey. Crowd work scares me.
Before we jump into the topic, what have you been up to, Jay? Because we haven't had you for a while.
I know. I've done all sorts of stuff. I've sorted out all my Easter presents already. I know it's only December, but I do it in January now. But yeah, I've got all my Easters now. I've been busy. I've been gigging. I've been doing lots and lots of courses and so on and so forth. I'm going back to Edinburgh this year. So yes, I've started work on my new hour. I'm kind of close to being to the 40-minute mark so far. So I've got to now try all of that stuff out. So I'll be doing lots of little previews and stuff. I think I might be going back up to Brighton, but I won't be doing the full show up in Brighton, but I'll be doing spots, and I think I'll be teaching a course up there as well. So yes, so that'll be all fun as well. But yeah, I miss these podcasts. I genuinely do miss these podcasts because I think we're still allowed to say this, that Mr. Saunders does put a lot of work into structuring this whole podcast, and then we turn up and fuck it up completely.
Stop lying to the listeners so you know what happens in this room.
But it's
just that we don't give a shit about it and we just do what we want.
No, it's brilliant. How's everyone else doing on here? Okay, fine, great then. Fun fact evening to you guys.
I went out and saw a decent gig at the last week. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
with Mr. Nick Coppin.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Gabe and Sean have actually now met in person and ended up letting their dogs basically bang each other. You know, it's just standard comedians with assistants' dogs behavior.
He tried. He tried.
It was a bit off-putting when the dogs were looking at us when we were banging them. So.
But that's standard for Manchester, isn't it?
I've never seen it done like that before. Oh my God.
Was it doggy style? Was it doggy
style?
I
knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Well, the dogs didn't see it coming.
Isn't that usually the case with doggy style if they're from behind? You never see it. Never mind.
No, it's just because of my excellent Spider-Man.
Just feel it on your hand when you give them a reach around.
Oh, dear Lord. How did we already turn this corner when we're supposed to be talking about crowd work rather than bestiality?
Well, you mentioned a crowd, so I turned the corner and went the other direction. That's pretty much what happened.
Right, seeing as we've got an expert in the room, Jay, how would you define what crowd work is?
Well, crowd work is basically, it's another element to a gig. I mean, you write material, you go up on stage, you perform it, and the audience laugh. But in a stand-up situation, an audience would also love to get involved. And this is why heckling is one thing. But crowd work in specific is another way of connecting with a room. So MCs do a lot of crowd work at times where they actually start chatting to members of the audience. And what it does, it kind of loosens them up a bit. But it can add a whole new dimension to a gig. It can, like, it makes the gig a lot more unique because people sort of say stuff and comedians respond to it and so on and so forth. And being good at crowd work is being able to make something funny out of all of these kinds of things that come up. It's a phenomenal skill to have. Some people can do it really, really naturally, other people can't. But it's a skill that really changes the game a bit as well.
Because I've experimented I'm not going to say it's the very lightest form of crowd work I've done. In the sense of I ended up finding there were standard responses coming back to some of my gags. So the one I end up playing with more in a crowd work sense was when I turn around and I start talking about Hawk and how he's better looking with me, better looking than me. And I turn around, turn to the audience and go, am I wrong? And there's always a woman in the front row that will go, yes. And I can just stare at her and go, you didn't need to answer that fucking quickly. And it suddenly, now that's a very, very safe way of doing tiny elements of crowd work. But the idea for me to stand up there and go, so what do you do for a living? Terrifies the living daylights out of me. Is it something you've ended up doing? You tried to do an entire crowd work set before, Jay?
Oh yeah. I sometimes like I'll tell you a couple of stories, but like sometimes crowd work can go completely against you, right? I remember this one gig. It was in Lincoln, right? And I was headlining, and there was this guy right the way through the entire night. There's this guy sitting in the front row, and he was just heckling everybody. Good nature, but he was getting more and more pissed, as it were. So I went on, and he was trying to give me some stuff, but I was coming back with him, and so on and so forth. And it was all fine. Everyone was laughing. He was laughing. Everyone was good. And he was sitting next to this really, really kind of like cute blonde woman, right? And he got up midway through while I was on stage, and he went off to go for a piss, basically, right? So he got up and left, right? And his woman was sitting there, and he left his phone on the table, and the phone started to ring. Okay, right. So this blonde woman said, "Go on, answer it. Go on." Right. So I was like, "All right, fine, fair enough. I'm on stage. It's in that moment. Everyone's like, yeah, go on, answer it." So I picked up the phone, and all I could hear on the other side of who, where's my husband? Who is this? Where's Keith? Who is this? Who are you? Right. So I'm like going, your husband? Okay, so who's the blonde woman he's been sitting next to this time?
No.
Yes, you clocked the same time I did, right? After the event, right? To which the entire crowd could hear this woman. I was like, and hear the whole conversation. To which the blonde woman went, "What? He's married?" Right? And the guy comes back, right? And he's standing at the back of the room. Now, obviously, he hasn't heard any of this stuff, right? So he's standing at the back of the room, and everyone is pissing themselves with laughter at this situation, right? He starts laughing, but the audience can clock him and go, he doesn't know what has just happened, and we're actually laughing at him, but he has no idea what has just happened. So they laugh even louder. He laughs even louder and starts walking to the front of the room, right? To which the blonde woman gets up, walks around, smacks him, proper Will Smith, the guy, right across the face. Right?
Baby.
The entire crowd go, "Whee!" like this, right? He sobers up very quickly and goes, "What on earth just happened?" Right? And I've still got the phone in my hand. I'm going, I think.
Oh no.
Right? The guy looked like he wanted to punch the shit out of me, right? So the security guards would seen all of this happening. As he walked into the room, they were standing right behind him. So as he suddenly sobered up and went, I'm gonna, they grabbed him and literally carried him out of the venue. The entire crowd went, "Whoa!" Started pissing themselves with laughter. The MC of the show, he runs out because he wants to go and see what's happening outside. So he goes to me, carry on, right? And he runs up to the back of the room. I'm standing on stage. Everyone is pissing themselves, right? For about 5 minutes, the laughter dies down. And the first thing I says is, can everyone just please switch their fucking phones off? I don't want to do that again. Another 5 minutes of laughter. But this is where crowd work can go completely against you. So it's one of those things. It's like it's an instinctual thing. Sometimes you can figure out whether a crowd will actually go with stuff or not. Other times they just won't. So you almost kind of have to blend it into material or whatever. But it's a great thing. But it's a skill that you do have to learn. Certainly if you're emceeing and if the crowd are really, really reactive,
Mhm.
You have to go on and just play off of everything that's kind of going on. But it's a lot of fun. I think the best crowd work I ever saw was probably in Brighton. Where again,
I,
we had two
I was
members in the
just going to
audience.
say, I was going to say the only member of Project Comedy that has done a 10-minute crowd work set, not realizing he was doing it, was our own Gabriel Murphy.
Hey, it was fucking 15 minutes.
Yeah, 5 of them. We're waiting for one of them to come back with a drink for you.
I mean,
It's not
that's
my
not-
fault you offered to go and get me a pint.
that has to be the ultimate pinnacle of, you're doing a great crowd work set when your front row turns around and go, I'll buy you a pint during your sets. During your sets, gets you a Guinness and passes you to you live on stage. Because it doesn't seem to scare you trying to do crowd work, does it, Gabe?
With a face like this, mate. No.
But what takes you into it? What are you looking for out of the audience when you're trying your crowd work stuff?
For me, it's just like anything I can pretty much make anything funny. Like, just them two them two down in Brighton there. They were saying that they met each other on the buses. So you've got so many lines that go down there. Was it the 69? Because you've got to be careful when you're on the 69 because the next stop's a shithole.
Oh God! Oh God!
Who's on the top, who's on the bottom deck, all that sort of shit. It's so many go down the line of. But yeah, it's just a matter of having a laugh with people. Really, it's just joking.
It's amazing how relaxed you are when crowd work goes really, really well and you're on form with everything. It's amazing how relaxed you are. Different from a set. Doing a set, your set inside out, outside in. But when you're kind of crowd working, there's an extra buzz you get out of it because it's like, oh, okay, I conquered something that I didn't even know that was going to happen, and it all worked beautifully. It's great. It's great.
I've seen you, Jamie, that you've ended up maybe not to your greatest benefit, but as soon as you walk into a room, you go, "Oh, great! I'm going to start with crowd work now. I thought something up." Go up, get a couple of brilliant laughs, and then go, "Oh fuck, the script. Where do I start?" Because you've done that a couple of times, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yeah, good old Wibble brain acting up again. Yeah, start out with the best of intentions and then fall on my arse. Yeah, that's what frightens me. Like you say, it's about doing the unknown, but I think if you can master crowd work, then that's brilliant. That's a brilliant skill to have.
Because I'll be absolutely honest, it's almost like my script has become my comfort blanket now. I mean, when we first started learning this back during the COVID lockdowns and what have you, there's no way I can do this. Then suddenly I could do it. Then I suddenly found that I could. My big fear was I would not be able to retain the memory. I would not be able to, hold the set. Because that's one of the things with PTSD is your short-term and long-term memories are shot to fuck. But now, well, I actually find it easier to do a 10 than a 5. I just get up there and let my script run on me. But the concept of letting go of the script and engaging with the audience, that still scares the living shit out of me to do. And I admire so much MCs and the way that they're able to just, between acts, suddenly find a connection, what have you, and actually lift an audience. Because we'd be nothing without the MC bringing the room up and warm for us. So it is something I would like to develop. Maybe one day I might like to try a bit doing a bit of MCing.
No, it's great. It's great. Like sometimes like the material just writes itself. I remember one gig, wasn't that long ago. And I asked if there was any married couples in the audience, right? This woman shoved her hand up, went, "Oh, you used to married? How long you used to be married for?" And she said something like about 14 years or something like that. And then sometimes you get people in the audience, if they're drunk enough, they'll start volunteering information, which they don't need to volunteer. But as far as I was concerned, getting into the material that I wanted to do, that was enough. But then she said, I knew he was the one since the first time I met him, right? And to which everyone in the audience went, "Oh," and I was like, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" And then I just whispered to someone in the front row, went, "Stalker, stalker," right there. To which everyone laughed, but she was still like, "Oh, I love him so much." To which I then said, "Was it love at first sight?" And she went, "Yes." I went, "That's what a stalker would say." And so it just wrote itself. And then I was following up. I went, so how long were you two going out before you got married, right? And he went, and the guy responded, 3 years. That's the first time he spoke, right? And I was like, wow, she wore you down for 3 years. I can imagine. I can imagine, like you just like one day she proposed to you, and like you're just standing inside. All right, I'll marry you. Just stop looking at me through my letterbox, will you? All right, just give me 5 minutes to get a cup of tea. Leave me alone for 5 minutes. And it's just the improv element of that just comes into all of this.
Because I think I would have played with soon as he said 3 years. Went, and let me guess, you didn't know about the first two of them.
Oh, I'm gonna write that one down next time. That adventure.
Stockholm syndrome can be so romantic.
I was then saying to him, is this the first time she's let you out of the house? Is this the first time? You can blink if you need help. I've got a guy over here with a phone. It's all right. His wife keeps phoning him up on it.
If we were to look at, comedians that are experts at crowd work to see what sort of like the skill set involves, who would you recommend looking at? Because I instantly think of Hot Water and go,
yes.
Watch a couple of Hot Water videos and you see what I define as brilliant crowd work sets.
For me, it's Al Murray. Because he goes straight, oh, what do you do for him? Where do you come from? What do you do? And he's got something to say about everything. And whenever I went, for the first time I went to go and watch an Al Murray tour show, I've seen him at clubs loads of times before, but the first time I went to go and see him at a tour show, over half the show was literally just chatting to people in the audience, and he was so sharp. Yeah. It was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is phenomenal stuff to watch. And it just, I remember one thing he goes to this couple in the audience, it's on one of his DVDs, one of his specials. He goes, oh, so how did you two meet? What do you do for a living? She goes, I work in a hospital. And the other one was like, I work on the railways. And he goes, how did you two meet? Was it an inquiry? To link two jobs together and suddenly just come up in that second. I was like, wow, that is phenomenal. But that's when crowd work just looks beautiful. It's just like so spontaneous. It adds to the show, plus all of his material. It was a phenomenal show. Same with Hot Water. When you kind of watch Paul, yeah, when he starts to sort of chat, Paul Smith, when he starts chatting to people in the audience and going, all right, Pete, all right, and then he just goes off on one, and it's lovely. Dara O'Brien is another one that I
was going to say about Dara. I was going to say about Dara because I love the way he, give me a number between 1 and 5. 1, 2, 3. Right, it's you. Blah, blah. But the way he turns that into callbacks at the end of the show, he'll start with crowd work, but then it's like a massive thank you to the audience. These are the people that have made the show happen. What a memory for because of course he's got to do that every single night. And I don't know if you guys actually saw the night he did for a DVD record, and he just struck gold. He had a former RAF guy in the front row that worked in the ambulance service now. And his jokes about the ambulance service and the Air Force were absolutely fucking outstanding. This guy became the star of the show, not Dara. This one poor bloke sat in the front row became the star of the entire bloody show. What a skill.
The Wickham Swan here does a lot of like surprise comedian stuff. And apparently Dara Breen was there. My friend likes to go to the mystery comedian gigs. And Dara Breen was there, and he was crowd working the just kind of going down the line. Who are you? Quick 1, 2 sort of thing. Right, move on to the next person. Got to my friend. She looks like kind of very alternate emo, etc. So, some quite easy stuff going in. She loves it. She knows it's all a good bit of fun. Her mum was sat next to her, and he got to her mum, and her mum just serious face, just shook her head slowly at him, and he kind of looked at her and went, paused for 3 or 4 seconds and went, right, next person. And then just was like, I'm just going to move on. But that in and of itself apparently made it really funny, because he just sort of paused, was like, thought about his life choices and went, nah, do you know what? We're safer going over here to the next person.
I'm not going down that road.
But apparently I assume that's like crowd work, even though it's like we're not touching it. We're not going to touch that, but that's still crowd work.
I remember one of the first times I went up to Edinburgh and we saw this improv comedy show. And instead of it just instantly starting on the stage, they walked around and started asking people what they did for a living and what have you. And they were going up. The first bloke was an estate agent, and the next woman was a housewife, and the next guy was a lawyer. Comes up to me, and the microphone's in front of me, and he goes, and what do you do for a living? I went, I'm a Royal Naval Officer. And he went, I beg your fucking pardon? I went, I'm a Royal Naval Officer. And he went, right, okay, this is going to be... Lights come up on the stage, and it was the first year of Big Brother. And what they ended up doing was playing us on the stage. So what they were doing, so the guy that was the estate agent, his opening line was, good news, everybody, I've sold the house. It was just brilliant to end up taking a bit of crowd work and then turn that into a full improv show. And I do brag, it was my character that actually won Big Brother when he actually went through. But it's an amazing concept that you start with a bit of crowd work and then turn it into a full improv night. It was an astounding evening's entertainment.
I think it takes the pressure off you though, doesn't it? Because like, you can turn around and say to them like, oh, who are you? What do you do? By the way, no pressure, but you've got to make it funny.
But that is the fear sometimes, because when you let go, I teach this in the intermediate course as well, how what you're looking at in an interaction. It's an exercise I think Gabe and I think Jay, I went through with you, but it's an exercise called question, answer, and comment, right? So the comedian asks a question, the audience member answers, and you comment. So if there's only two classifications in comedy, which is setups and punchlines, the ideal interaction would be punchline, punchline, and punchline. So that'd be a funny question, may evoke a funny answer, and then you make another funny comment on top of it. Whereas if it isn't, then it's like a serious question could evoke a serious answer. Then the pressure is on that funny comment that you've got to then make. And that's the fear. Because if you don't make anything funny out of it, then that's a dead interaction. Then if you then follow it up with another thing, and that's another dead interaction. I've seen comedians try and do this. And they think it will just write itself and people will just laugh. And it's backfired immensely, where they've lost status in the room completely. And everyone's like, what? Why? Don't talk to me. Just do some jokes, for crying out loud. So that's the opposite side of when crowd work doesn't go well.
Well, there's also that beautiful story about how Lee Mack got fired from Pontins for his first ever stand-up. And I don't know if you guys have heard that story. But basically what he was doing, he was recycling jokes of the standard Pontins comedian. And he said, what you got to do is ask them where they come from. So if they go from Scotland, say, oh, skinflint. If you're from Wales, sheepshagger. But what you're doing is you're begging for comedy gold. And when somebody says, where are you from? I'm from Kent. And then you go, you can't call me that.
Mm.
He tried to do it, but he was absolutely pissed. And he went, where are you from? Scotland. He went, yay, well done. Where are you from? He went, Wales. He went, hooray. Anybody from Kent? And this bloke goes, I am. He goes, well, you're a cunt then. So he got sacked from Pontins as a comedian.
And whatever happened to him after that? Whatever.
I mean, he's gone nowhere, has he? I mean,
But he did.
I've heard he lives in Kent, but never mind.
From your background then, Jay, where do you think people like us? I mean, I've done several gigs, so are the boys. Sean is getting ready for his first ever gig, what have you. Yes,
Stop bringing it up.
You are.
You've got a fucking gig yet. Stop bringing it up. Rub it in my face every fucking week.
How would you approach starting to do a bit of crowd work?
Well, for me, the way when I first started doing bits of crowd work is yeah, sometimes when you're on stage and you're just doing open spots, you can get heckled sometimes. It's very rare, but you can get heckled by some drunk people, and that's like your first taster of it. But crowd work for me was even a thing like how do I get really good at crowd work? So I remember there was one club, and it was kind of quite legendary. A lot of people like as they moved up the comedy ladder, one of their first kind of paid spots, it was £5 you got paid, and you had to MC this night at this club. Um, and basically they had like close to 20 acts on, right? The
Holy
MC didn't
crap.
have to do anything. They literally, because otherwise the night would massively overrun until about 3 in the morning. So the MC basically all they had to do was about the first 5 minutes, and then literally just bring every act on with nothing else in between, right? And the audience were kind of told that they're allowed to heckle right from the offset. So when the MC went on, the audience were ready, as it were, to fire at them. So this was your kind of testing ground of like how you could deal with all this, and then you just bring the actors on, and then that was it. And uh, like it scared the living bejesus out of me because it's like, okay, I have no idea. Certainly when you're a brand new act and you're new and you're still nervous and so on and so forth, that like I have no idea what might happen. You're going through, all the anxieties about going up on stage and everything else. But now you feel like I'm in control of this entire show. It's on my shoulders, and then I've got to bring all these acts on. So I don't want to fuck it up for them. If you fuck it up, then all the acts then have to come in and work extra hard to try and get this connection with the room. But for me, that loosened me up massively. I barely did two of my jokes in that first sort of 10 minutes. And all the rest was lit with the audience shouting stuff back at me. I remember this is very weird, right? I went to the States, and over there, the MC is usually the newest act, right? Whereas in the UK, the MC is usually one of the most experienced acts because they can handle everything. But over there, it was like the newest act. And I went to the Improv Club in Anaheim, and the MC was so new, and I think the audience know the hierarchy. So the MC is brand new, then you got the opening support act, then you got the headliner, and so on and so forth. So they gave this MC shit. They really like tore him apart, and he didn't know how to handle it at all. And then when like the first act came on, they tried to give him some sort of heckling. He shut them all down very, very quickly. And then the audience all went, "Nope, we're not heckling anymore now. We've had that little person that we can heckle," and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's like when an audience kind of, they want to challenge someone, that's what they'll do. And that's part and parcel of a night. It can make a night, but it can also destroy it completely. But I felt sorry for the MC. He could not deal with it. He was just like, "So where's your daddy from?" Hunter. Literally on stage answering questions like it's an immigration interview. It's like, wow. But yeah, no, it does loosen you up, but it also adds to another dimension. I mean, stand-up is very addictive. But it adds another dimension to it when something like unique like that happens at the gig, and you remember it forever and ever and ever. It almost doesn't go away. Material, once you've done material over and over again, if you're just going on stage and just doing material, all the gigs kind of blend together. But when you're doing something like crowd, this is why I can remember all of the heckles that I kind of get, because I'll know what my response was in that, and if it worked, I remember it clearly. If it didn't work, I was like, okay, don't do that one again then. But it's great. It's great improvising as well. It's great improvising.
What we'll do is we'll pause for a couple of seconds and show you how you can end up joining Project Comedy. Would you like to join Project Comedy? The reality is, it couldn't be much simpler. All you have to do is get on the internet and find your way over to the Project Recce website. That's Project, the word Project Recce, as in RECCE .org. Have a look in the upper right hand corner, click on the menu and click on Project Comedy. Scroll down there a bit and you'll find a link that says apply now. That will send an email to one of our ambassadors. If you're even more bored,
Scroll down a little further and you'll actually see a couple of our ambassadors making tits of themselves on the stand-up comedy stage. Nonetheless, just click on the link, get in contact, and you can be as funny as you want to be.
Sean, seeing as you're the newest to the comedy circuit of all of us in this room at the moment, what are your thoughts and fears about doing crowd work?
Well, I think the main one was always it's just about getting heckled. I think I said something similar in the last podcast, to be honest, when I said, part of me wants to go. It said fears of first gig, and part of me says, getting heckled, and a little bit of me wants to, go on, heckle me, make my fucking day, and I want to really be savagely shut someone down, but. It could happen, but that could also, I'm conscious that could also kill a gig because you'll just be sat arguing with the same drunk knobhead the whole time when you're actually just trying to work. Now, obviously, if you savagely shut someone down, they're probably not going to fucking touch you again because they're too busy trying to, remortgage their house for how bad you've just destroyed them. However, I think part of my gig has. Part of the 5 that I'm trying to write has, I don't know if you could call it crowd work. So this is obviously kind of a bit of a question, but is crowd work more just any time you get the crowd to interact with you? Is that because I know we talked a lot about heckles, we talked a lot about sort of asking questions of the crowd, but is crowd work really just any time you get the crowd involved in some way?
Yeah, that's how I would define it. Yeah.
Anytime you're actually trying to get the audience to build laughs for you. I mean, you're either using them to provide you with a setup or a punchline, isn't it? I think that's what crowd work is. You're not just talking to them for the sake of talking to them. You're talking to them to either deliver a gag or make one for you.
Yeah, so the at the start, one of the relatively few ones is so I asked, like, the crowd, part of the 5 is like, oh, anybody got a phobia of spiders? Because I thought that, asking something like that, I could get the crowd just to connect with me better. Because you're saying about having a connection with the audience. Well, anybody else got a phobia of spiders? Okay, here's a thing, a funny about that. Like, to try and, but just by asking that question, I thought, oh, well, this is how I can get people to connect with me better instead of me just jumping into a spider thing, for example.
Well,
and that's something that comes out of the editing process, isn't it? Because you can actually use that as the perfect kind of setup for you. So rather than turning around and saying, I'm scared of spiders, anybody else in the room scared of spiders, you've actually got redundancy in there, you've got duplication. But if you actually set it up as, anybody in here shit scared of spiders, you get that, me fucking too. That is a better way to actually build it through as your setup to take you to the punchline you desire.
Yeah. The only thing also is I say this to all of my students. When you ask a question to the audience, be prepared for an answer. It may not be the answer that you want them to be. So if you ask them, is there anyone here scared of spiders? You are going to get some drunk dickhead. If there is a drunk dickhead in the room going, no, I love them. And now you've got a whole new situation you've got to deal with before getting into your material. So that's the only thing. Whenever you ask a question to an audience, that's crowd work, but it could potentially go off onto a complete tangent. So you just got to be prepared for stuff like that. So a lot of people, when a lot of my students, when they're doing their first ever gig, I try and encourage them not to ask too many questions to the audience. Just because if there is someone drunk and there's a bit of a dickhead, they'll kick in. And now, if you're brand new to it, you've got all your anxiety levels going all the way around over here. Now you've got to deal with this situation and then get back into your stuff. But it can also be quite liberating as well. I remember one student of mine. He was doing his very, very, very first ever gig, and he was kind of like going, I'm very there's some, is it disaphonophobia or something like that. He like various noises irk him. He gets a reaction, a mental reaction to noises, right? And he actually said, I've got this disaphonophobia, misophonophobia, I think that's what it is. And like certain noises always like irk me. and then magically someone sneezed in the room, right? And he went, "Fuck you," just like that, and he explained it perfectly. And like that got a huge round of applause because he literally just reacted to that very thing that happened. But in any other situation, when he says that, well, there's no other reaction. People are just going to sit there and wait and so on. Because of that, he turned it into a punchline. It's great. So it does liberate you as well, and it's what great of getting laughs.
And that thing you said about it can go one of two ways for you, because Jamie, you engineered a joke in that fashion, didn't you? When you ended up coming out with talking about your daughter, and you dropped it into a pun, so you knew that there was going to be two reactions to using a single pun in it, wouldn't there?
Yeah, I can kind of if you can guide your responses, you can narrow down what audience are going to say. There's some element of control for people that maybe like control or being in control of type of things.
For Gabe and Jamie, especially because they've done the most gigs and what have you, are there comedians you've worked with that end up working crowd working effectively for you?
Yeah, Sean.
We've got to have a go at the newbie. We've got to have a go at the newbie.
I'm not playing anymore.
Well, the gig I saw last week, I had the punsmith Mark Simmons in, and he actually worked crowd work into his act. For his puns, he'd ask people what the hobbies were, and he'd make up a response saying, "Oh, somebody did knitting," or let me think of one. No, sorry, I've lost my thread. What do you do? I play cricket.
Oh God,
I'm stumped if I can come up with something. It's things like that, Yeah.
There's a really good example of one that's brilliant for it. It's Tim Vine, isn't it? The
Yes.
fact that you could just say any noun or adjective to him, and he will have a joke for it. It's just every single time, anything that comes back from the audience, he's written so many one-liners and puns. He automatically has something there. Any comedians you've seen, Gabe?
I like Randy Feltface.
Yes.
He has a very unique start in his crowd work because he's a puppet. So he says, "Hi there, what's your name?" He goes, and then when he doesn't get a response, he goes, "Am I looking at someone or am I looking straight down the fucking aisle? My eyes aren't real."
Yeah.
See, that guy's next level because he's totally reliant on crowd work, I think, because he's not only got to have the jokes, the material, he's also the fact that he's engineering and operating a puppet at the same time he's doing his routine. It's just like extra level. How that guy pulls it off, I don't know.
One of the funniest ones, one of the funniest things I saw him do as well. He goes, "Oh, I've just seen that you can see around here."
Yeah, broke the fourth wall.
Look at me.
Now, here's a random one I was going to throw at Jay just to see if he actually thinks this is relevant or not. But it was just occurring to me during this conversation. What we do in the green rooms and in the podcast, is that training for us for crowd work?
Oh yeah, I'd say so, definitely, because it's not a scripted show. Sorry to break the barrier there.
Wow.
I know some people are sitting there going, the use of language is so mechanical. It's amazing. No, we just fucking make it up. But but this level of banter is kind of like, we don't know what's going to come up next. We genuinely don't know how it happens. And then one of the bits of training as a comedian, which I do, is get you thinking into setups and punchlines, so that when something does happen, because you do this work over and over again and you think in setups and punchlines, that when someone says something, you automatically start trying to work out a punchline. Now that is critical in terms of crowd work, because again, in a gig situation, anybody could say something. If you're trained your brain into thinking in setups and punchlines, what that person out there in the audience just said, you think up of a punchline because you understand the structure of how all of this works, as opposed to coming up with a concept that you then have to explain through to then justify what that funny thing is. You just say it straight away in one line. So yeah, this is absolutely it. The stuff we do in green rooms, yeah, is pure banter, and it's a lot of fun. And that's exactly your best sort of training for crowd work, definitely.
Because like, yeah, this will be a point to Sean and anybody new coming into it. I mean, and this isn't me picking on you again, Sean, I promise. But you'll find that.
Have you done a gig, Sean? I just want to know.
But
Have you not said?
But as we call the evenings we get together that aren't actually the podcast records, we call them the green room. The green room at a real gig is very different to what it feels like in the green room we run online. Comedians are very, very competitive people. They are very competitive people. And you'll find at a gig, if you can make the other comedians laugh, you know you're doing all right, because they don't want to. They're focused on their own thing and what have you. If you can make other comedians laugh. However, when we get together in the green room, that is the only objective, is making each other fucking laugh. And then that starts building into your material going, yeah, I know that form of humor works. It's very different from being around another collection of comedians. Am I right or wrong here, Jay? Because you've seen it on the higher scale.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in the kind of dressing room at like a big club and so on and so forth, to be honest, when comedians are in the right frame of mind, we banter around just like we do here in the dressing room before the show. And in many cases, I remember there's a friend of mine, a guy called Anil Desai, and he's the other Asian comedian, by the way.
Oh my God, there's more than
There's
one.
only two of us. There's only two of us.
Right, I'm reporting you to the Reform Party now. I now have decided which way I'm voting in the general election.
But the one thing that he was saying is that when comedians are on it, the banter that we have in the dressing room is actually sometimes a lot funnier than what we're like on stage, because there's this level of connection between us, and that we all understand how setups and punchlines work. So we are trying to beat each other with a bigger punchline or a better punchline or a well-performed punchline and so on and so forth. Car journeys up to and from gigs. I mean, you're sitting in a car for like 4, 5, 6 hours at times, traveling up to a gig, and then you do the gig, and then you're in the car 4, 5, 6 hours back again. That is pure comedy banter. That is literally okay. We'll have a little bit of time where we'll just chill out, rest, listen to music, rest, whatever. And then there'll be times where all four of us in the car are literally just like going at it. I have seen once, it was late at night, where even the driver lost control of the car for a little bit because he was laughing too much. He was like, he went from the middle lane to the right lane and then came back in again. There was nobody else around, but that is just the level of banter that we just all kind of do. But it's a lot of fun.
And then we've also got to talk about, you've given us a couple of examples where crowd work has gone wrong but ended up being funny. But there's sometimes crowd work that goes wrong that is just freaking painful. And I look at the four of us that were all in Brighton, the one word, the one colour I've got to say, that being maroon. Gabe, you've got to tell this story because you've got the best. Your reply back to Maroon was just so joy. I'll set it up for Gabe. It was one of the shows run by Laughing Horse, and it was the kid-friendly show. This was just after lunchtime, so I think it was about a 12:30 kickoff gig, something like that.
Yeah.
We go down to see our venue and go and see the kid-friendly circuit. Our great friend Nick Coppin was the MC for the evening, and then this act came on the stage with the stage name of Maroon. Gabe, please expand.
So after quite a lot of talking, while if he was covering his eyes when you were from the light, so no one could actually see his eyes.
It did look like he was doing a pretend army salute very badly all the way through the set, wasn't it?
Yeah, terrible. So after a long time of him talking and not really getting many laughs, he said, "I often like talking about poo," and for some reason as well, he just sounded creepier as he was talking about it. It's just like people aren't weirded out by the fact that I'm topless, but I've got a dressing gown on. Let's just up the weird a bit.
It was the ultimate question to ask for crowd work, wasn't it? Because he just leant into the front row, remembering there were kids in the audience. We had kids in the room below 11 years of age, and he went, I like to poo in unusual places. Who here likes to poo in unusual places?
And honestly, the tumbleweeds were deafening.
He looked like Josie from the Technicolor Dreamcoat. If you bought him on Wish.
So I tried to help him out a little bit by going, I pooed in Iraq. And he didn't do anything with that. He just carried on talking.
That was the bit that astounded me. I mean, we were all there because we're all thinking like comedians. He's gone and asked the question, so it's clearly a setup for something else. There's Gabe. There's been the biggest pregnant pause you can. It was the pregnancy pause of a fucking bull elephant, if you can think about it in that fashion. It was tumbleweeds running through the stage, and then Gabe went, "I pooed in Iraq." And he went, "Oh, really? Where?" And he went, "In a porta potty." He went, "Right."
It wasn't a porta potty.
There was.
I'm not a toddler.
But he didn't. But he didn't take it.
Thank you very much.
But he didn't take it anywhere. It was just sort of like he thought the shock of saying, "I like to poo in unusual places," was a big enough punchline. It's like this is the opposite of comedy and crowd work at the same time. This is a basis for a certified sanction. He needed to be committed.
Do you know what? I so wish it had said, "On your mum." Should have said it.
This show has got everything. Your mum jokes, got jokes. I just do everything here.
See, I want to know what he classed as an unusual place, because clearly it's not a fucking toilet.
It does have to be said that it ended up becoming beyond a callback, because of course we had Jay headlining for us on one of the shows in Turn. And as Descartes once said to me, I like to poo in unusual places. And it was only us at the back of the room that fucking knew what the joke was.
Oh.
Paraphrase Descartes.
Not one of his popular quotes. But that's the thing, is because that night there was only a few people in the audience, but like it was fun just because I knew you guys had seen it and I'd be part of it, and I was like, right, I want to make them lot laugh. And then I leave the audience and go, what? And then I explained it to them as well. They all laughed again.
And then they got the gag so beautifully as well.
But yes.
He came to see us, didn't he, on our show? He came in and I remember him saying to his, and I'm using air quotes here, friend, he turns to him and says, "So this is what comedy's like."
I think he did get upset that we were actually doing a comedy show that got laughs, and clearly that's not what comedy's about. You're doing a comedy show where the audience actually laugh at you is a little bit depressing, isn't it? I mean, we really let ourselves down in that show. We actually made people fucking laugh and took some money. I mean, bad on us. Bad on us.
This guy's been working ages, and you guys just turn up with your funny stories and jokes and stuff. That guy's been working years doing this show.
Mandating people.
Watching people poo in strange places.
Just so he can write some material down. He's been looking at CCTV footage for ages going, that's a strange place to poo. Let me see if I can say that.
A shopping centre.
I'm just thinking to myself, do I need to put a warning on the podcast episode saying not suitable for scatophiles?
Maybe he was just reaching out for help. That's and he
Well,
just
if the scatter files, they're going to love it, Jay.
All right, fair enough.
Oh,
But I'm certainly not reaching round there to help him. If he
I've
needed
just
help,
fucking got where he got that from.
it's clearly the only stand-up comedian that I've ever met that needs a colonoscopy.
No,
It-
it was from Family Guy. It was a song that Peter Griffin sings. I like to poo in strange places. So he's obviously seen that and just thought, I can fucking have that. You fucking knob.
Well, basically, this guy didn't even write that himself.
we ended up
Family
making a we've ended up making our own better routine from that one question that he actually had. Go on, let's wrap it up then, because I'll do a round robin with you, all of you. What do you think? After discussing what we have about crowd work, I'll start off with you, Sean, because obviously not just because of that, but is it something you want to experiment with in your first set, or do you think you're going to do a couple of standard fives to learn more about it, or is it something you want to play with? I'll roll that round to all of us. So, Sean, what do you think?
I think practice makes perfect by the sounds of it, and each crowd's going to be different. So if it doesn't work for one, it'll work for the other. However, I'd say for practicing crowd work, because you do these podcast episodes, and we basically heckle you the entire time.
Yeah, that's my job.
I'd say you get the most practice out of everybody here.
Yeah, I'm just an accepting soul. I know I'm a dickhead, so I'm quite happy with
Just
that.
derail the entire fucking thing.
Especially with your officer heckle in the last record, you bastard. I thought I'd made a very succinct point and went, I've never heard so much.
Oh, what? When you give me a layup? Yep.
What about you, Gabe?
Basically, because I'm that much of a gobshite, I'm quite comfortable doing it. I don't think I could disappoint anyone more than my pan. So you've got to think like I get off on top of her. She's had to deal with me grunting and sweating and all sorts of. It can't be a great experience.
And looking like a hairy thumb.
I've got the most awful images going through my mind that you're now trying to do crowd work while shagging your missus. It's just
well.
Anybody else in the room feeling like I am? It's
they did say like imagine the audience naked. It's quite weird. It's quite weird because I got an erection and half my family were there. I think I'd be quite comfortable doing it.
What about you, Jamie?
It's definitely something I'd like to explore as another dimension to my routine. If I can, like I say, if I can at least ask a funny question, that's a third of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hopefully get some funny responses to give funny answers to. Yeah.
I'm absolutely terrified of the concept, but I know it's something I need to add into my repertoire, because at some point, and that will happen to each one of us, at some point we're going to be asked to be an MC. And unless you can actually do a bit of crowd work, how are you ever going to be successful as an MC? And that's going to be a natural part of our journey. Jay, do you want to wrap up with any golden tips for us, or make us feel calmer, or tell us we're all shit? Just carry on with the standard demean project comedy and our mental illness, and we'll just carry on as normal.
No, like the whole thing about crowd work, I've been through the whole gamut of experience, from being a newbie to then sort of doing a lot more, and then this being my living and doing all sorts of things and all sorts of very kind of interactive gigs and so on. One thing I'd say is I love crowd work. I absolutely love it. It's one of those things that, like, I have funny material, But if I'm involved with a gig where people shout back or they say something, I will play with it. I like my job is as a comedian is to be as funny as possible. And then when people start to jump in with stuff, it makes it like so much more unique. But I think that's also from an experience level as well. When you're watching like some comedians who are so damn good at it, let's say like your Al Murrays and your Dara O'Briens and so on and so forth, it's amazing to watch. um Crowd work, I think my initial fear of crowd work is the fear of not being able to come back with something. But I think the more you actually gig and the more you kind of condition your brain into thinking in setups and punchlines, and the more of these kinds of interactions that you do, let's say like the podcast or the green rooms or whatever, where you're just bantering with everybody and so on and so forth, your brain naturally assimilates to that. So when you're on stage and in a pressure situation and someone shouts something out, you can deal with it almost immediately. Um, Very few heckles have ever really kind of thrown me so much. But once you kind of get over the nerves of being on stage, that's where crowd work now takes on a whole new level because you're comfortable on stage and nothing can fuck with you on stage. You're so cool and calm on it that if anything happens, you can deal with it. So I love crowd work. I absolutely love it, and I urge all of you to go off and start gigging. Definitely, Sean. Go out and start gigging. and suddenly like enjoy it as part of the whole process of being a comic. It's great.
This is not banter. This is bullying. Fuck you all. So I've just switched over to my fucking phone Wi-Fi, which is apparently responding better than my mobile Wi-Fi. Sorry, than the house Wi-Fi. So apparently, my house Wi-Fi, I was basically phoning in from fucking Gaza at this rate.
Is that the same place Jay gets his Wi-Fi from?
I was saying that's an improvement on mine. Oh, the host of a podcast, and I've got less Wi-Fi than a Palestinian. It's fucking brilliant. On that particular ad lib, let's wrap up the episode.
Yeah, before we get cancelled.
That's a massive amount. A massive amount.
Oh no! And with that terrible pun, hopefully this has given you some kind of insight in what crowd work is. If it's something you want to give a go to, and work out where you want to slot it into your comedy career. I've got to thank my amazing guests, as always, my fellow ambassadors, Gabe and Jamie. Thanks very much, guys.
Welcome.
To Sean, the newbie, yet to do his gig. We keep on kicking him in the backside. He bloody loves every bit of attention that comes out of it. Thanks so much, Sean.
Fuck yourself.
And of course, to the god that is himself, Mr. Jay Sodgar. Cheers for being here, mate.
Thank you.
And you've been Jay Saunders.
And I've been Jay Saunders, and we'll finish off as we always do. We're giving you a few links where you can follow us on social media. So until next time. If you want to see what we're actually like on stage, please have a look at our YouTube channel. Search for Project Comedy, Veterans Doing Stand-Up, and look for our black and white logo that's exactly the same as the one we use for this podcast. You can also now follow us on Twitter. We can be found at Proj Comedy. That's at PROJ Comedy. And me, Jay Saunders, I can be found on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter if you look for Comic Jay Saunders. That's all one word with the letter J in the middle. Comic Jay Saunders. Thanks again to everyone that's taken part in this episode. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Project Comedy Podcast. Please support our veterans as they continue their comedy journeys. To find out more, including gigs our veterans are doing, please search for the Project Comedy group on Facebook, where you'll also find links to Project Recce, the veterans charity that makes Project Comedy possible.